Hello everyone and welcome to this video. I want to discuss another aspect of data that we will be dealing with, which is basically how do you deal with missing values in your data sets. So I'm going to talk about some of the popular functions that we use related to handling of missing information. So for this demonstration, I'm using a similar example that we had worked on in the last video. So I have this dictionary which contains the grades of a few students, and I'm going to create a data frame out of that. Okay, and just to see what that, just to remind you of what that data looks like. You can see that this data set has grades of a few students in a couple of tests. Okay, now what I will do is I will intentionally introduce some missing information. And the way I have done that is in my dictionary, I have gone and replaced some of the marks with np.nan. Now, you might be wondering what is this NP? So if you see, one of the libraries that I imported for this video is known as NumPy. So NumPy is the library for scientific computing available in Python, and we will be using it quite a bit in data science. So this is one of the examples of using one of its features. So np.nan is essentially a way to signify missing values. NaN stands for not a number. Okay, so what I have done is in this dictionary, I have replaced a few numbers with NaN, which is essentially missing information, and I'm going to update my data frame with this. So let's see what our current data frame looks like. So this is where we are, and as we see for Eva there is one missing score, for Katie there are two, and for Bob there is one, and for Valley and for Sam there is not there's no missing information essentially. Okay, so let's try out some of the missing information handling functions on this data frame. So we would start by looking at a function which is known as drop NA. So let's see what that does. So on my data frame, I'm going to call a function known as drop NA, and let's see what drop NA did. So drop NA essentially dropped all the rows which had even a single number as missing. So as you can see, only row 0, which was the first row, had all information that was non-missing, and that's what we are left with. Okay, and now suppose we wanted to change this a little bit so that we could get the columns with non-missing information, and let's see how to do that. So I'm going to say grades.drop NA, and I'm going to show you another feature of these Jupyter notebooks. If you click on Shift tab, you basically get this pop-up menu which helps us complete, which could autofill some of these parameters, and this can be immensely useful. So as you see here, one of the parameters is axis. So what that does is essentially, if I was to say axis is equal to 1, that would drop all the columns with even a single number missing. So axis equal to 0 corresponds to rows, and axis equal to 1 corresponds to columns. Okay, so this is a useful feature to keep in mind about drop NA. Okay, now let's build upon this and try to look at some more features of drop NA. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to go back in here, and let's say I don't want to drop all the columns with even a single number missing, but I want to look at that what are the number of non-missing elements. And then based on that, I want to define a threshold which will then decide whether a particular column should be dropped from my output or not. So in order to do that, there is a function which is known as thresh. And again, if we go in here, you can click on this plus button, go down and read, and it can tell you more details about thresh, where it says that it tells us that what is the requirement in terms of the non-NA values in our output. So what that really means is, let's just try that out. So I'm going to say threshold is equal to 1. And remember, we are working with axis equal to 1, meaning we are working with columns at the moment. So if I do this, I basically get all the 5 columns in the data. And the reason is that threshold equal to 1 says that do not drop any column as long as it has even one non-missing element. And as you see, all these columns have at least one non-missing element. So let's see what happens if I change this to 2. And what we expected, that if I change this to 2, then basically the column corresponding to KT should get dropped, because in that column I have only one non-missing element and not 2. So let's see what happens there. So that's exactly what happened. And that's how threshold helped to remove the column KT, because that had only one non-missing element in that column. Okay, so that's how drop NA works. And feel free to explore the other aspects and parameters of drop NA as well. So let's go on to another feature. So a lot of times when we look at missing information in our data, sometimes we might want to drop those rows or columns, but a lot of times we actually want to replace that missing number with something more meaningful or useful. So let's look at how could we do that. And in order to do that, we have a function which is known as fill NA, and let's try how to do that. So what I'm going to do is that, again, I would do Shift Tab, and in Shift Tab you can see that you could specify a value for what you want to fill the missing information with. So let's try something very obvious. So suppose if I say something like that, and let's see what that did. So that clearly replaced the missing information with whatever value that we had specified inside value equal to parameter. Okay. Now, very often when we are looking for a replacement, we might want to replace with something which is more meaningful, like let's say the mean of the column that we are working with. Okay. So let's look for one of the examples for that. So let's say we want to replace the the missing information for Bob, okay, with the average of the other two values for Bob. So how could we do that? Okay, so what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to say grades, and I'm going to go to the column for Bob, okay, and you can see what that does. That leaves you with just one column. That's something that we had already discussed before. And once we have that, we can build on it. We could say dot fill and a, and we'll say value equal to, I would say grades. I would again go to that column on Bob, and I would say fill it with the mean of the value of grades for Bob. And let's see what happened here. Okay, now this is it might look a little bit long when you see that for the first time, but I want you to spend some time and understand that. So what I did is I went to the column that I'm interested in. I called the fill NA function. I wanted to give the value as the mean grades for Bob, and to do that, what I did is basically value is equal to grades for Bob, which is that column that I'm interested in, and I called the mean function on that, and I ended up getting what information that I needed. Okay, so this is something very useful, and please spend some time and internalize the concepts that we had gone over in this file and in this video. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.